you could not live with your own failure. Where did that bring you? Back to me.
Alright, so the top 3 gen regression perks have been gutted. They are not what they were. They are in a much worse place. And that creates a power vacuum. Something will fill this vacuum, or in the very least, something needs to fill this vacuum. Because if we can't get the gen regression back on track, I worry there may be some unintended side effects. Now, let me go on and say, in case you're not sure what I'm talking about, you're just now hearing about this, pain resonance has been essentially made a non-factor. You're not going to see pain resonance anymore. It's a token perk, it gets 4 uses per game, it's donezo, gone. Overcharge and Call of Brine, both of them taken from 200% to 135 and 125% respectively. Both of those really hurting now. So I don't think it's unfair to say, I don't think at all that it's unfair to say that Jolt/Surge is going to be the new go-to in many ways, but there's no denying how limited that perk is, especially for killers who don't use M1s to down their victims more often than not. So people like Huntress. So with this power vacuum, I think it's time to ask, is it time to bring back Hex Ruin? And when I say bring back Hex Ruin, some of you who've been here a little longer than others might have a certain chill go down your spine, a certain cringe kind of emanate out of your body because you say, no, not Hex Ruin. Come on, remember the Salmonation song, Hex Ruin, you've been ruined and you'll never be the same again. It's gone. It's done. Leave it in the past. But here's the thing, I can't just do that. I can't just leave it in the past because when I look at Hex Ruin, what I see is the potential for a very healthy perk. Now, let's go into a brief little history of Hex Ruin, why it's controversial, and why I think it would actually behoove the game to bring it back. So, Hex Ruin was introduced with the Hag. Actually, Hag came out with 3 hexes, and it was the first time hexes had been introduced to the game at all. And out of her 3 hexes, Third Seal, kind of underrated, honestly. I think it's actually a decent enough perk, but generally, I mean, everybody knows it's the weakest one. Devour Hope, complete feast or famine. I think the fun factor's through the roof with it, but it's not consistent at all. But Hex Ruin was a must bring in its early days, because the way it worked was if you hit a regular skill check, your generator would lose 5% of its progress. If you had a great skill check, well, you keep progressing, but you don't get the usual bonus for hitting a great skill check. So what we were dealing with was this just obscenely powerful perk that you faced every single game. And it was awful. It was miserable. And there was always this almost reverse psychology that you would hear from survivors where they would say, oh, killers, don't run Ruin or you're going to teach survivors how to hit a lot of great skill checks. Well, that was malarkey. That was BS. It didn't happen. It was never going to happen. No, survivors did not get good at hitting great skill checks, and the ones who did were always going to do it anyway. So after years of being this thorn in the side of survivors, Behavior finally came out and they said, you know what? We are going to address this. We're going to change it. We are going to make Ruin something way different. And what they did, let me make sure I'm telling you right. Yes, at patch 3.5, they went at 3.5. Let's see, when was that? Wow, that was a while back. At 3.5, they changed it. So instead of Ruin doing what it did with the regression while you're working on it, it would regress if you weren't working on it, and it would take 200% of the normal speed. So if you kick a generator and it starts regressing, that's 100% speed. So this one was passive 200. So if you come up on somebody and they're working on the gen and you run them off of it and you loop them for a bit, that gen will be regressing while you're looping them if nobody's on it. So great, I thought that was a really good redesign, very healthy. But Behavior disagreed. Behavior thought, you know, it's still too strong. So what they did in 6.1, which came out in July of 2022, they nerfed it a second time, and instead of 200%, they cut it in half. It's like a divorce. It's like alimony. They cut it in half, and they made it to where it's a 100% regression, which is just not worth bringing. It's just not very good. I mean, yeah, sure, it saves you the time of kicking the generator, but it's not very good. It's not a very effective perk. Now, what I would argue, I actually thought the 200% was fine. But obviously Behavior said, no, we don't think so. We don't think so. We think this is too strong. Okay, fair enough. So that's the history of it. What am I proposing? I'm saying bring it back maybe 175 instead of 200%. If that's still too much, try 150. See if it starts getting a little more usage. Because I think that Hex Ruin addresses two issues, right? So Hex Ruin, it addresses the issue of killers who can't really pressure gens. Because sometimes people talk about pressuring gens, and they talk about it like it's all about the player. But some killers are just much better at pressuring gens than others. And by killers, I mean the characters. I'm talking your nurses and your blights. You know, anybody who can teleport obviously is going to have a little bit better time trying to pressure gens. But if you're somebody like the clown, if you're somebody maybe like, I don't know. I mean, we could go through this, you know, the plague even. If you are one of these killers, a ghost face maybe. I'm sorry, you hear my chair clicking, by the way. It's a professional setup we have here. It's a great studio, but it's a bedroom. Yeah, I think it really solves one of the big issues that just by playing the game, just by chasing survivors, you are pressuring gens, which is good. I think that's a healthy aspect of Ruin. However, if you have it powerful enough that it's worth running, it does need some kind of counter, right? So that's why it's a Hex perk. Maybe it explodes within the first 10 seconds of the game. Maybe they never find it at all. This is the entire point of hexes. So to me, we are coming up on almost a year of Ruin being completely useless, completely falling out of the meta. Right now, if you look at it, I say completely out of the meta. Actually, if we go off of the stats from Nightlight, which is a DBD statistics website, very useful. I will link it in the description. Check it out. It's got some really cool info, and I would love to see more people become supporters so that they can keep running because I love this website. But it's actually the 31st most popular perk over the last 14 days. So it goes to show you that even a bad gen regression perk is still a gen regression perk. And I think what we would see is if we bring Ruin back, it gives killers a little more ability to get some of that early game pressure. It gives survivors more of something to do outside of just holding on to a generator. And in addition to that, I think one thing we all want when we play Dead by Daylight is a little bit of diversity. We all want a little bit of gameplay diversity, and part of that comes down to perks. So if it is more realistic that a killer might be bringing Hex Ruin, I think it then becomes more realistic if we follow a because type model, not an and then, but because they might be bringing Ruin, this might happen. What is this? This is the survivors bringing Detective's Hunch, or the survivors bringing Counterforce, the survivors bringing, actually there are quite a few, small game, right? There are all kinds of things. Maybe they bring a map instead of a med kit or a flashlight. This is the type of thing we're talking about, where this one change, just making Ruin a little better to where it gets a little more use, to where it's a little more realistic that you're going to be facing it. Because I gotta be honest with you, I don't know the last time I saw Ruin. I don't. And I played this game a lot. I cannot recall seeing Ruin. I'm not gonna say since its nerf, but yeah, damn, it's been a long time. You just really don't see Ruin very often anymore. And I think that if they brought it back, what we would be doing is making the game a more healthy place, which obviously at the end of the day, that's what I'm always looking to do. I am always looking to, gosh, this chair is so loud. It's just so, tangent. But anyway, that's what I was thinking. It's just it's an idea I've been kicking around. So let me know how you feel about it. Do you want Ruin to be buffed? Or conversely, maybe you think that buffing Ruin would be a terrible, bad, very bad, no good, very bad idea. If that's the case, but you're looking for a little more perk diversity, what would you like to see buffed? Because if somebody gives a cool enough idea, I might make a video on that. Because, at this point, that's kind of what I like to do. I like to talk about, hey, how do we make this game more fun for everybody? And I think bringing Ruin back would be a good way to do that. But I am obviously curious to know what you've got to say, so please do let me know down below. As always, I am so thankful that you watched this video. I hope you're doing all right, doing great, in fact, wherever you are. Until next time, I've been Das Food. Bye, friends.
I've been dreaming on in my head like I've seen it. A life worth living is a life with meaning. I'll do what I love till my heart stops beating. I'm feeding this demon. Got a taste, can't erase bitterness in my